Jade, and today I'm going to talk about when OCD has you doubting life choices. This was something that was huge for me, and every now and then, even though I consider myself recovered from OCD and don't feel that OCD impacts my life, particularly these days, it does still try and get in every now and then. But I'm going to talk to you about how that doesn't any longer pose any form of issue for me, because it doesn't, even if it tries to get in, it's disarmed immediately and doesn't even affect me or often make it even to my consciousness. It just kind of happens and then dissipates. And so one of the first things to talk about in relation to doubting life's choices has to be our OCD, relationship OCD, doubting, are we with the right person? When we reach certain milestones, thinking, do we buy the house together or do we still live separately? It feels like it's too late. If I make the step to move in with them, there's no going back. And every stage that you go through in a relationship, you feel the same way. Now, I'm here to tell you, as someone that considers herself recovered from our OCD, there's no stage in my relationship that I feel like I couldn't get out of now anyway, because I've made peace with the societal rejection that might come from divorce and separating and having our kids not have their parents together. So I'll talk to you a bit more about that. But again, I've gone through asked to be the girlfriend, then let's live together, then let's buy together, then will you marry me? And now we're getting married, and then can we have kids? And now another kid. So you can't really go further in a relationship than what I have. We have 2 kids together, we have a mortgage together, we have an entirely interlocked life. But because I've adopted a more rational mindset to life, I'm not in any way fearful. My ROCD doesn't latch at all to the likelihood or possibility that I've made the wrong life choice. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about that. I'm going to give some more examples first of things that you could doubt so that you can resonate. And then I'm going to talk to you about how you can move away from doubting life choices as a result of your OCD latching. It's really interesting stuff. Another one could be whether to travel or whether to settle down. And OCD loves FOMO. OCD loves the fear of missing out. I've experienced this so many times. I always felt like, oh my gosh, I settled down in my early 20s when the social narrative is you must travel and have fun in your 20s. You must do all the things you want to do. You must be single in your 20s. And yeah, that may well be true. That could well be that I definitely should have done that in my 20s. But the reality is I didn't. So am I going to spend my days worrying about that? I don't think so. But I absolutely did for a really long time. Travel or settle also gives this thing of like, what if I go traveling and miss the love of my life? But what if I stay with the love of my life and then miss out on all the traveling? So it's this kind of duality of like life and always wanting everything perfect. And we'll talk about perfectionism. The other one is like if you're working out what your career is going to be. And so it's like, what course should I take? Should I do a degree or should I do an apprenticeship or should I just take a job? Or like, what's going to be the right thing to do? Am I going to regret this? This is going to be a big investment. What if I get it wrong? What if I mess up? And just working out like where I should be, where should I live while I'm in uni? Should I be having housemates or should I be living alone or should I stay with my parents and travel? All these things is in seek of the perfect answer. The other one could be like buying something, whether that be a huge investment like a house or just investing in something that is going to improve your life, but you're worried, what if I, financially get into trouble and I can't get out of it and then I'm trapped? And it's really anything that you can think of that you're doubting. It could be a friendship, maybe there's a friend that you fell out with a few years ago and they want to reconnect and you're terrified because you're like, what if I get hurt again? I don't want to let them back in my life. And then you hold them at arm's length. And it's all these things where if you're feeling doubt, then OCD is going to enjoy and thrive in that. And I think the first thing to say is like, and this could be construed as reassurance, so we're not going to spend too long here, but like the fact, it's just a reality fact, like there is no perfect route in life. And I think making yourself aware of that at the start of this process, like do not use this to reassure yourself multiple times during your time doubting things. And I don't say that to be mean, like it will not help you to do that. If you want to get better, it will not help you. So for example, I don't do this. Oh, okay. What if I married the wrong person? oh, well, there's no right way, you could have married someone else and maybe they'd have financial difficulties, or maybe this, or maybe you'd fight all the time. I don't do that. I just am at peace that maybe I did. And that to me is how a person without OCD would react. They don't really overthink it. They're like, yeah, but I did marry them. We're in 2 kids deep. There's no point thinking about that or worrying about it. Maybe it would have been better. I don't know. I don't really want to think about it. Like, genuinely, that's how I respond to those types of questions now. The same with my 20s. So I always had this vision in my early 20s. I work in like corporate marketing, and I always was going to go to New York and be in like advertising agencies and do the big roles. And I would often think, oh my gosh, I threw all that away. Why did I not do that stuff? And it's like, I don't care anymore. Like, genuinely, I think I did miss out on that. I'm not reassuring myself. I probably missed out on loads of cool opportunities by not doing that in my 20s. But I don't care. It's gone. I'm not bothered about it anymore. And I could do that in my 50s if I wanted, when my kids are a bit more grown up. Maybe I'll do 6 months in New York next year. I don't know. So it's just like having a bit more of a flexibly minded approach to things. And let me tell you, I'm not talking about these things flippantly from a place of like, I don't care about them. I used to be like curled in a ball, upset about these things. I would be in my WhatsApp group with the OCD recovery friends I've got. If someone mentioned something that might mean that I'd made the wrong life choice, I would be in bed, like crying in a ball, like, what have I done, shaking. And so today, to just be so chill about it, I think is a pretty big turnaround. And again, it's like, yes, there is no right way. Whatever choice you make in life, there'll always be something to the counter. And so if I had traveled, like I've got friends who traveled most of their time. I've got a friend who is with the love of her life now. But she always says to me, oh, I just wish I'd met him sooner, like how you met your husband super early. I wish I'd met him sooner so we could have had loads of time together. And it's interesting because I'm saying, yeah, but you wouldn't have had all the traveling you had in your 20s. And so, like I said, this is something that you don't want to be overthinking about, because it does lead toward reassurance. You've got to be super careful with this. But it's just an actual fact that there's no perfect way in life. However, the real key to getting better is to make peace with, if there is a perfect life for you and you've missed out on it, then that's your reality. Like, maybe my perfect life would have been that I traveled to New York, Paris, all these amazing marketing agencies, and then I met the love of my life in one of them, age 29, and then everything's perfect, and we have these children, and I ended up exactly where I am today, but I had so much amazing time in my 20s, and I never look back or think, oh, I missed on that time. Like, maybe that would have been better. That's fine. That's also fine. And so I think that making peace with any reality, and the fact that the fear could be true, the fact that you're doubting whether or not you make the right decision, if you make the wrong one, that's not that big a deal. Like, it doesn't matter if you make the wrong decision. Maybe you'll face hardship. Maybe you'll have thrown loads of money away. Maybe you'll have lost the love of your life. Maybe you'll have missed out on incredible opportunities. But why is that the worst thing in the world? And I think my advice would be, just become more flexible in your thinking. And one of the best books to read for this is How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, Yes, Anything, by Dr. Albert Ellis, who is the kind of pioneer of rational emotive behavior therapy. He created it. And by reading his books and following the principles of what he lays out, that's why I don't feel any discomfort towards doubts I used to have. Like, even talking about it now is pretty staggering how I feel literally zero upset about any of this. There's nothing you could talk to me about in terms of doubts about making the right choices in my life that would trigger me anymore, or even make me feel sad or discomfort. I'm not upset about them at all, versus, like I said, crying and shaking. And it's just because I've got a rational view. So this book, How to Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, Yes, Anything, is so great, because it talks about this idea of like, there is a choice in how you feel in things, and things that we think we couldn't stand and would be awful and terrible are just inconvenient and not nice. Like, it's not awful, it's inconvenient. It's not terrifying, it's unwanted. It's unwanted and unpleasant. It's really about toning down extreme emotions. It's not about not being emotive. So the word rational emotive behavior therapy used to freak me out, because I'd be like, I don't want to be a robot. I don't want to be like this rational person, because I always thought of rational as like, oh, you're so rational, there's no emotion. And that just isn't the case. It's called rational emotive behavior therapy. So by having more rational emotions that are more down to earth, that are more healthy, so you can feel disappointment rather than depression and utter like devastation. Yeah, devastation. So I'm not devastated to have lost a friend. I'm sadly disappointed and I will miss them. I'm not absolutely furious that somebody wronged me. I'm disheartened and a little bit disappointed again. I'm not terrified that my husband is going to leave me for somebody. I would prefer it didn't happen and would find that very challenging, and it would be an upheaval of my life, but it wouldn't be devastating. It wouldn't be inconsolable. And this is where rational emotive behavior therapy comes in, this idea of turning down these emotions. And something that's worth mentioning is that society does not create a very good like base for this right now. Everything's like red flag, cut this person out, extreme, extreme, extreme. And, you know, I've suffered and faced a lot of trauma in my life, so I'm by no means ignorant to the feelings of trauma and things like that. But I think we also highlight too much this idea of being triggered in life. And I think that we've gotten to a place where like we are talking about the fact that people can do things to us. You are triggering me. That makes me feel this way when you do that. But really, like, I've got to a place where I know that I'm in charge of my responses to things. And even if, for example, past traumatic experience have been very challenging to navigate, don't for a second think I'm saying, oh, if you just label it differently, it's fine. Like, you're making yourself upset. I'm not. I've been through some stuff. It's about recognizing that no one's doing things to me. I am responsible for how I can process this and come out stronger from it. And such a great example of this is Viktor Frankel's book, Man's Search for Meaning. This is like not even to do with anxiety and OCD, but like a globally recognized incredible book about a man who endured Auschwitz concentration camp during the World War. And he basically shows how his unimaginable suffering during this time in the concentration camp. I'm talking like eating like barely enough to keep him alive, sleeping with hundreds of others like on like a hard wooden crate where he's like stacked with other people or whatever, going out into the freezing cold without proper footwear and just being painfully thin, and hours and hours and hours of labor with no food and nothing to like keep him warm. And he's, you know, getting all sorts of problems with his feet because he's walking in the freezing cold and he's laboring, and just stuff that you physically think that you couldn't do it. Like when you read that book, you're like, you wouldn't be able to do that. I don't see how that would actually be able to happen. That's like the level of suffering he endures. And the book is not actually depressing as a book to read. It's a very like enlightening and motivating, because it's like he's able to turn that into ways of seeing meaning in the suffering. And that's been game changing for me in OCD. Is like, I'm not feeling like a victim anymore as a result of OCD. I feel like blessed to have gone through this journey and to be able to help other people with it. And I think if you're struggling with this element of OCD, the doubting life choices, I do think that perspective building tasks can be good. For example, reading that Viktor Frankl book, also watching TV shows or movies or documentaries about hardships that people have gone through. There's a lot going on in the world right now that we can, you know, look at and think, wow, that is something that would be worth getting myself upset about. But the thing that I'm worrying about is probably not worth as much focus as I'm giving it. So like my biggest fear was like, what if I wake up when I'm 70 and it hits me like a ton of bricks, I made the wrong life choice? I only have to reflect on the fact that right now there are people in the world whose loved ones are not coming back for a natural disaster cause or for any other reason, maybe it be violence, war, anything at all. They're not seeing their loved one ever again. Are they worrying about whether or not they picked the right partner or the right husband or the right, bought the right thing or traveled or didn't travel? Like that gives you immediate perspective on the issues. And for a little while, I thought that this type of advice was kind of like the advice that, again, society can't stand, which is like from older generations. Oh, get on with it. You don't know how lucky you are. In my day, X, Y, Z. Now, I definitely don't wholeheartedly agree with older generations on many things. For example, mental health is treated in that way. It's like, oh, I don't know what you're whining about. We didn't have depression in my day. All that sort of stuff is obviously ridiculous and unhelpful. But there is a lot of incredible lessons we can learn from older generations who have genuinely seen some unbelievable difficulties. You know, my in-laws are nearing their 80s, and you know they were born around the time of World War II ending. And so for them, if I'm moaning about anything that's to do with like how we live or just day-to-day stuff or the price of things, like I can see why they're like, oh, shut up and get on with it. We didn't have food. Like our whole city had been obliterated by war. Pull yourself together. And I think that that's what we can learn from older generations and look beyond things that perhaps we don't agree with, such as maybe sometimes more rigid beliefs on certain things. But again, that's just everyone's a product of how they grew and the environment that they grew up in. And I think there is an element of truth to that idea of like when you're a kid and you say, I don't want this food, and then your parents say, yeah, but there's children in the world who don't have any food and they would kill for this food. There is such an element of truth in that in terms of gaining perspective. But that, of course, is not to say that we're going, oh, well, OCD is not that hard. Look at people who've got it harder. It's more about recognizing that the things that our OCD is latching to and the things we're fearing in the grand scheme of life itself are not as terrifying as we imagine. They're unwanted. We wouldn't want them, but we're aiming to have a response and reaction to them in the same way that a person without OCD would have. And so I hope that's been useful. Another thing that you could try watching is something I watched recently on Netflix called The Swimmers, a film that's incredible as well. That's a good one. I'm trying to remember any others I've watched recently. But any documentary to do with hardships, anything to do with people going through unbelievable quests. Like I may be a bit strange, but I love watching stuff like that. I love watching things that reminds me of like humanity in the world, and I'm very inspired and motivated by people who've been through difficult things. And it reminds me not to get so caught up in like, I want everything to be perfect and I want that person's brain who's had no suffering and I want this dandy life and just enjoy my cup of coffee in the coffee shop and everything's a dream. That just isn't reality. And I think having a deeper sense of perspective in life and building these rational frameworks in our brains is so great on so many fronts. So I hope that's been useful to you today. If you want to drop me a comment below, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this. Sorry if there's something I haven't covered. If you have got a doubt that you're unsure of that this is applicable to, just drop it below and I will do my best to answer you. Have a great day. Bye.